Good day everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing a comparison of the two AIOs, the 280 series coming from Bequiet, the Silent Loop 2 against my Arctic Liquide Freezer II 280. I will first start off with my main rig over here. I've been using this for almost a year with the Arctic Liquide Freezer II 280mm series on my processor itself. And I've deliberately placed a thermometer inside the case. Now the case itself is not open, it's closed. And the reading inside is 36.3 to about 36.5 degrees Celsius. Looking at my room temperature over here, it hovers around 32.9 to 33 degrees Celsius. I'd like to talk more about the specification of my system itself. For the processor, I'm using the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X. The cooler, as I mentioned, is from the Arctic Liquide Freezer II 280. The RAMs, I'm using a DDR32GB kit coming from Crosshair Dominator Platinum with clock speed of 3200 with cache latency 16. The graphic card I'm using is a Asetek RTX 3080 overclock tough. The motherboard itself is an ASRock X570 Taichi. Now, this motherboard itself, I've done some mode. If you guys are interested to know how I bring down the temperature on the motherboard itself, right, you can click on the top right hand corner. I'll leave the URL over there. Now for storage, right, I have 3 sticks of 1TB Seagate FireCuda 520 M.2 Generation 4 SSD. The power supply is using a Silverstone SFX-L 850W Platinum. Now the chassis itself is the Lianli O11D Mini with the vertical mounting bracket for the GPU itself, and it's actually using of a PCIe Gen 4 riser. For fan that I've actually placed in this case itself, I make use of 2 Arctic P14 fans on my radiator, and the rest are case fans, which is 7 Arctic P12. Configuration as follows: the top is 3 exhausts, bottom 3 intake, and rear 1 exhaust. Let me take you to my UEFI of this system itself, or should I say the BIOS, on what configuration I've done. Now this is my UEFI or the BIOS. All this I mentioned in my specification earlier. Now looking on the OC itself, right, or overclocking stats, I've done nothing. Everything is actually on auto. The only thing that I've actually done on this page itself is only to load the XMP profile on my RAMs itself, which is running on 3200, and I've set the Infinity Fabric frequency to 1600, and that's all I've actually done. Next, on the advanced mode, I've triggered PBO2 at advanced mode, and these are the rating: PPT, TDC, and the EDC. Now the PPT and the EDC is by default. All I've done is only on the TDC, which is from 95 to 112, so that when I run the system itself, right, it will go consistently of all the cores, multi-cores at 3.8 or 3.9, and at a turbo boost of 4.6. Moving on, this is actually my optimizer curve. I've actually set per core, and these are all the stable configuration. Now for some reason my Core 6 and my Core 8, they run unstable on 9, so I have to tweak it down all the way to 4. Next will be the fan configuration. Now CPU fan I've set to full speed because I find no point setting low, mid or high. I'll just go straight full speed and take the readings and to show you. Then on the chassis fan itself, right, this is on my top fans, which is on full speed. This is my rear, which is full speed, and this is my bottom, which is full speed. The test methodology is pretty straightforward. As I mentioned to you earlier on my UEFI and BIOS, those configuration will stay, be it I'm using the Arctic Liquide Freezer II and to swap to the Bequiet Silent Loop 2. Now I will be using this software known as Cinebench R23 to run 2 rounds of 30 minutes to test on full load, or to test the stability itself. So this will trigger my processor to run at 100 full load, and it will show you the results as in like the temperature itself. Now on this section here is redundant. I will be covering up with my video capture on my main rig so that you can see the internal temperature and my room temperature on my desk. Let me zoom in this part for you. Now I'll start off with the CPU temperature. Right now at idle is running on 64.4. You might be wondering, wow, that is very high. Reason being, at the background I am running the OBS to do this camera capture on my main rig, And in the meantime, while I'm talking to you and recording, I'm making use of my video editing program to do the recording. That's why the idle temperature is 64.4. Coming to the motherboard itself, it's either hovering at 41 to 42, this is per normal. And my VRMs on the top section and the side section itself, as you can see, the temperature is different. On the top itself is 45 degrees Celsius. Reason being, my Arctic Liquide Freezer has a VRM fan that's blowing to the VRM itself. And the side, there are none. That's why the temperature on the second reading, which is at the side, is 48 degrees Celsius. Followed by the South Bridge, which is my X570 chipset, is running at 55.8 degrees Celsius. Right below the readings on this, these are all the RPMs of all my fans. The CPU fan itself is running at full. The chassis fan, top, bottom, and rear, all running at full. It will not change so that it will be consistent. And this is the South Bridge fan, or known as the X570 chipset fan. It's running at 27 to 2800 RPM. The core clock itself, or should I say the clock frequency of all my cores, 16 core, all will be running at consistent on 3.8 to 4 gigahertz, and sometimes for maximum boost itself, right, is 4.6. So throughout the test, you will see all these readings. The core usage right now, as mentioned, this is on ideal. When it's at full load, it will be at 100. This is my core voltage, which is hovering. Then these are my RAMs. The CPU, PPT, TDC, and EDC, as I showed you earlier, once I've triggered the run for Cinebench itself, right, this will trigger 142, this will trigger 112, and this will trigger 140. And this is to show you how much the motherboard is drawing power from my PSU. GPU temp, this is redundant, but I'll leave it here, and the T-junction and the power consumption, because mainly this test is on the processor itself, not on the GPU. And these are my M.2s, the three 1TB fire cooler 520 SSDs. These are the temperature. Before I conduct the test itself, do take note that this test is taken today, which is 8th of December. Once this test is over, I'll do a swap of the AIOs from this Arctic to the Bequiet itself. Now, reason for this, why I mentioned the date itself, right? I will let the Bequiet AIO to run in my system for 14 days. This will allow cure time between the IHS and the copper block of the Bequiet. This is 1. 2, the radiator circulation. I'll let it run. And after the 14 days, right, I will conduct the test on the Bequiet, similar to this Arctic Liquide Freezer, as I believe this is a fair comparison. So let's start off with the Arctic Liquide Freezer first, with the first 1 hour, or should I say 30 minutes. Then right before it ends, right, I will take a screenshot of the hardware info before it ends on all the stats and leave it one side. Then once I've completed the next test, which I have to wait for 14 days on the Bequiet, once I've done that, right, I will pull that stats against the Arctic Liquide Freezer II stats. Here we go. 14 days have passed, and as you can see, the Bequiet Silent Loop 2 is in my system right now. I'm using the default Silent Wing 3 fans. They are the 140mm fans, and right now I'm going to do the test. I'm going to conduct the test right now, but before I do so, take a look at the room temperature itself. It hovers at 32.9 to 33 degrees Celsius, which is similar to the day that I've tested on the 8th of December with the Arctic Liquide Freezer II. And the inside case temperature is reading at 36 degrees Celsius. And right now, I will zoom this in for you. And as usual, I'll place this over here. So this will be as a reference. Now, on the readings over here, right, let me just zoom in. As usual, the CPU temperature, this is at idle. Do take note that I'm running on OBS and the video editing program where I record my screen. And the motherboard, the VR, take a look at this. It's about the same, see, 45, 47, around there. And the Southbridge X570 chipset. These are all the fan readings, which this CPU fan 2, right? In fact, this you have to connect two connections. One is CPU 1, which is for the pump, and CPU 2 for the silent wing 3. So it's running at a max RPM of 1500 to 1600, and the rest are the top fan, the bottom fan, and the rear fans. And this is the Southbridge fans, and the rest as usual. Now let's begin with the test. I'll first start off with the first 30 minutes and then the last 30 minutes, and before I end this 30 minutes I will do a screenshot. Here we go. The results are out between the Bequiet and the Arctic. Let's take a look at the temperature reading. Now do note that Liquide Freezer itself, I have been using this system and it's been like 9 months or so when I conducted the test, and this is the result. And as for the Bequiet, I remove it after I've tested the Arctic, and I've let it sit in my system for 14 days before I conduct the test, which is on the 22nd of December. Now, indeed, I am impressed with the Bequiet Silent Loop 2. Reason being, it's not very far behind from Liquide Freezer 2. And look at the temperature over here on the processor itself only. The only drawback is in fact the motherboard itself that affect the rest of the component. Take a look at Bequiet itself. As you can see, this is my board and the motherboard temperature is 43 degrees Celsius, hovering around there. And on the Liquide Freezer is hovering around 40 to 41 degrees Celsius. And why do I say this impact? If you were to take a look at the VRMs using the Bequiet Silent Loop 2, the temperature ranging is 61 degrees on both VRM, 61 to 63, around there. They are of equal. Else for Liquide Freezer itself, right, is in advantage, whereby there is a VRM fan on the pump itself. So we can see that the temperature is different. With this said, it goes on further. As you can see, my RAMs using the Bequiet is 48 degrees Celsius on both RAMs. Else for the Liquide Freezer, right, is 42 and 41. So there is a big difference over there. And for my M.2s, right, look at the temperature when I'm using the Bequiet. It's 44, 48, 48. 3 of my 1 terabyte Seagate fire cooler. And on the Liquide Freezer itself, right, it's 42, 46, 46. So we can see the big difference over there. Now, this is my experience as why I think that it will affect the rest of the component. Even though I'm impressed with the Bequiet Silent Loop, the CPU temperature. Reason being, right, there are still heat accumulating around the surface area of the processor itself. So the heat is not dissipating fast enough, based on the fact that it's due to the radiator itself, which I will explain to you later. So having to say this, right, anything that accumulate on the board itself, be it plastic, PCB, heat will just accumulate and will spread. That will affect the rest of your component. Let's have a closer look on the radiator itself. Arctic compared to the Bequiet. Now as you can see, Bequiet at the top, this is a 27mm thick radiator as compared to Arctic, which is 37mm thick. there will be more heat dissipation on the Arctic itself. Reason being, it has a bigger surface area to absorb more heat off from the block itself, or should I say from the processor itself. So if you do see the fin stack, now the top is actually the Arctic. It is so thick, and there are more surface area to absorb heat as mentioned as compared to the Bequiet. Now take a closer look. This is Bequiet and this is Arctic. As you might be wondering, since the Bequiet fin stack is lesser as compared to the Arctic itself due to the thickness, and Arctic has more surface area, the Bequiet has less surface area, how come the performance is only 1 degree difference? The reason is on the fans itself. If you look at the two fans over here, one is the Arctic, one is the Bequiet. On the silent ring tree, if you observe, the amperage is 0.50 ampere as compared to Arctic 0.12 ampere. Now what does ampere means? It means that how much current it needed to draw to spin the fan, or should I say the fan blades. For Arctic itself, is running gradually, as in like smooth, and you can see the rotation rate is not really that high, but it does draw a lot of air based on the 5 fin structure they have designed as compared to Bequiet. Now Bequiet, I believe, is using brutal force, as in like when I compare the rotation against the Arctic, right, the Bequiet rotates really very fast. Reason being, the amperage drawn is 0.50 ampere, 5 times more than the Arctic. So having the brutal air pushes through the fin stack here, more hot air will dissipate off from the fin stack itself. So that's the reason why. And besides this, on the point whereby I mentioned that it does affect the rest of the component, reason being, right, the fin stack on the Bequiet itself is not more as compared to Arctic. I mean, it does absorb heat from the processor, but I would say that it's not more. That's the reason why the surface area around the processor itself, right, is accumulating heat. That will affect the rest of the component in terms of the temperature. Now, I did try something when I'm doing this experiment whereby I have actually swapped the fans. When I place the Arctic on the Bequiet itself, right, you can see that there's an increase in temperature about 2 to 3 degrees. Else, if I were to put the silent ring fan on my Arctic radiator, right, there is a significant improvement, as in like the temperature will hover from 67 to 68 at full load, and the rest of the component, it does affect slightly, not that much. Having to say this, right, I still will not place the silent ring Bequiet fan on my Arctic itself. Reason being, right, due to the nature of the fin stack is thick, it's just like a channel, and due to the fact of the silent ring tree is throwing brutal force, as in like brutal air through the fin stack. Imagine that you are in a tunnel. At the end of the tunnel, when you start to shout, and if the tunnel is long, right, the voice will travel and amplify. At the other end, it will be very noisy. It applies here on the Arctic radiator, whereby if you were to place the silent ring tree, right, on this radiator, right, you can hear a loud hum. There you have it. Just a recap. Looking at the temperature itself, it is indeed a very impressive cooler on the processor temperature itself. Else the rest might suffer a bit. But if your case have good airflow and you have fans that cater to blow on those components itself, right, it should not be an issue. If you to ask me, will I purchase this silent loop 2? I will, based on the fact that the original settings, as in the fans, the radiator and such, I will make use of it. In fact, this AIO has lots of features whereby I will talk about it on my next video when I start to put this or build this in the actual case on a Q58 coming from Lianli. Now, something to take note, this is the 280 variant, whereby the fan itself, as I mentioned earlier, the rating is 0.50 ampere, meaning to say the current itself. And if you want to purchase a 360, right, please take note on this. If you get a 360 AIO, total amperage will be 1.5 ampere. So let me just take you to this website here, where it shows the specification on a motherboard itself. This reflects same to your motherboard. Please check on your motherboard manual, or go to the website, download the manual, and to read the readings itself. Now, on your motherboard, there are specifications whereby it will tell you the fan headers, how much current it can provide, and these are the limit. So imagine that if you have a 360 AIO, having 3 silent ring fan is 1.5 ampere, which is above 1 ampere. If you were to plug it in, yes, it will work, but prolonged, it would damage your fan header or even melt the cables or the connector itself. So do take note on this. Alright, I hope you guys have actually enjoyed what I've shared with you, like the way I do, as I've learned a lot through this experience. And I did an open view on this silent loop too. If you are interested to know, you can click on my top right hand corner where I leave the URL. Just click there and you'll watch the whole overview of this Bequiet silent loop 2. Now, for those of you who are new, welcome to my channel, and if you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.